Welcome to another episode of the Advance Team. I'm Lance Dutson. Let's meet this week's team. From the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, Ben Gilman. Former Republican State Representative Jon McKane. Democrat Communications Specialist Lizzy Reinholt. And former head of the Maine Republican Party, Ben Grant. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. What? What?
Wrong party there, Lance, but no.
What did I say? Oh.
We would welcome him.
Former head of the Maine Democratic Party, Ben Grant. All right. So this topic this week is kind of a doozy. The big subject that came out of Augusta last week was a series of unfortunate online postings from Republican State Senator Mike Willette from Aroostook County. Senator Willette posted a number of things over the course of a few years that I think a lot of us, particularly in Republican circles, have probably seen a lot of, that dealt with some pretty derogatory opinions about President Obama, questions about his background, his religion, and some stuff that was pretty anti-Muslim, and a lot of people have called racist. This blew up, I think justifiably, that it was some pretty outrageous stuff, especially for a state senator. To his credit, Senator Willette took to the Senate floor and apologized profusely. I don't think he made excuses for it. Senator Willette is someone that I've known personally for a long time. I think he's a very, very nice guy, and I think even his colleagues on both sides of the aisle would agree that this is a guy that this kind of stuff was probably unexpected from, but definitely blew up. The Maine Democratic Party has called for Senator Willette's resignation, as has the NAACP of Maine, and this thing has kind of turned into a whirlwind. Jon McKane, I want to start with you. Over the years, Republicans in Maine have had a couple of these incidences. I recall when then Maine Republican Party Chair Charlie Webster complained that there were too many black people turning out of the polls in rural Maine. That caused quite a problem. We had the incident where Governor LePage allegedly told a room full of Republican leaders and donors that Barack Obama hates white people. And now we have this issue. Jon McKane, is this a problem in the Maine Republican Party, or is this much ado about nothing, do you think?
I think in this particular case it's much to do about nothing. I think it's a witch hunt of the first order. It's an attempted lynching of a good man. This is Mike Tipping doing what he does, digging for dirt, finding a little dirt, adding a little cow or bull manure to it, and then throwing it. The Maine People's Alliance and the Democrats who have joined in, I think, should be ashamed. It's exactly what we don't need in Maine politics, and I would condemn this kind of action from either side. Last year, when a Democratic candidate got caught in a compromising position in a van on the side of the highway. He was actually doing something illegal, I believe. I condemn those who attacked him, and fortunately, there was no petition to ask him to resign from office. This is what Mike Tipping and the Maine People's Alliance do. They did it to me. When I was nominated for the Durago Board of Trustees. They dug back 8 years on As Man Goes, and they found where I used the word Duragirls once, and because of that I was a misogynist and shouldn't be allowed in politics or on a board. They did it to Larry Lockman, went back decades from him, took quotes out of context, and tried to prove that he was in favor of rape. And of course, then you get the Bangor Daily News and the Portland Press Herald, Maine Today media piling on cries of racism. And now you've got this petition with the Dems claiming that they've got 4,000 signatures. Of course, all you need to sign this are an email address, any email address, and a zip code, and that qualifies for a signature. I think it's important to remember that Michael Willette was once a Democrat. He did quit the party. He joined Republicans, and Democrats spent really big money to force him out and to keep him from winning in 2012. It was one of the most expensive House races in history. But anyway, thankfully, I don't believe Senator Willette will resign. He has apologized. I think we should accept that apology. And I think this is going to make, this whole thing is going to make the Democrats look foolish, petty, partisan, hypocritical, and possibly even against free speech.
Ben Grant, what do you think about this? I mean, is this as Jon McKane has said, is this the Democrat outrage machine here, or is this different because it deals with accusations of racism?
Well, I think the quote-unquote outrage machine is justified when something outrageous has gone on. You know, I'm fairly tired of the continued trying to draw false equivalencies between different types of actions. You know, if we want to go down memory lane and go through every offensive statement that's been said in recent times, we can do that. But I think the focus right now needs to be on Mike Willette and the fact that you said it, Lance, at the very beginning. This is a series. This is years of work from Mike Willette to say some pretty vile, what I consider racist things online about the president. I think it's shameful for an elected leader at any level to subscribe to this kind of sort of Obama derangement syndrome, and I just don't think it's something that an elected leader should be saying. And I hate to say this, John, but you proved the point right there. You couldn't even get through your spiel without using the word lynching. I mean, I think we've got to get to a point where that's not appropriate when we're talking about these issues.
Yeah, I mean, this is Lizzy, and as far as I'm concerned, to me, I don't understand why it's so hard for us to admit if something is racist, it's racist. And to me, that shouldn't be condoned. And to me, it really says something about our society when something can be so blatantly racist, and yet we're not willing to acknowledge that. I think we need to have an open conversation about these type of comments, and at the same time, I don't care whether it was a Democrat or Republican. This was a long history of comments like this, and it does open up room for discussion, a discussion within the Republican Party, discussion in the entire state of race relations, of how we're talking about folks and how we're treating each other. So to me, I think this started a conversation, and hopefully it's a productive conversation, and I'd like to see it be a productive conversation.
John, I want to go back to you for a second to follow up, because this is something that I feel critical of Republicans and Republican leadership about this, and I think that maybe Republicans are having a hard time understanding this. When people criticize Senator Willette's comments for being racist, it's not necessarily that they're racist against Barack Obama, but his comments use the term Muslim as a pejorative, and I think that that's a problem. I think that there's a cultural problem with people thinking that you can call someone a Muslim and mean it negatively. I mean, go ahead, John.
Well, Muslim isn't a race.
Well, it's a religion. I mean, you couldn't go around calling someone a Jew or a Catholic or whatever.
But it is different. And I believe what he's talking about is the Islamic extremists, who, the ones who are out there fighting the jihad, cutting off people's heads. That disgusts a lot of people. And many of us think President Obama has been ineffective in combating this. And we don't see him doing enough to prevent more of it.
But because he's been ineffective in your mind, doesn't necessarily mean that he's related to...
That's satire, Lizzy. Lizzy, that's satire. Obviously, he's not related. It's satire. It's what Charlie Hebdo did. How many people here stood up with Charlie Hebdo? I did. Did you guys?
Ben Gilman, I want to ask you a question a little bit aside from this, from the politics of this. One of the big issues that's kind of at the heart of this right now, and the reason the story's kind of hanging on, is that, as John said, the main Democratic Party has put forward a petition asking for Senator Willette's resignation. I mean, from my vantage point, I don't think that there's any chance that he's going to resign. But how do you think? How do you think the leadership of both parties has dealt with this? I mean, are people at the State House thinking that Republicans have dealt with this and it's over, or that Democrats are overshooting? What do you see up there?
I think people, I mean, in terms of leadership, Senator Willette did apologize, and I think the story continues on. I just want to highlight, bring it back a little bit. I am a parent of an African American child, so I kind of put that hat on when I look at these issues and kind of from a parent's perspective. And the conversation I'd have as a parent with a child, and we see these things posted or we see these things out in our society. And I think we should take it as an opportunity for education and for dialogue and not turn it into political and make it Democrat, Republican. These are bigger issues than that, bigger across parties. I don't label people when we're talking about this stuff from the party perspective. So from the leadership in the halls, I think within the State House, people have moved on. There is a petition out there. I think that's the politics of it. But let's use this as an opportunity here in Maine to have a bigger conversation if we have to. And let's keep the politics out of it. That's from my perspective as a parent, and that's probably what I'd say to my child if we had an incident. Thank God we haven't had one yet. But so that's my perspective.
Okay, so to follow up on that, Ben, do you think the politics has been kept out of this, or do you think that Democrats particularly, or maybe both sides, have been playing politics too much with this incident? I mean, Senator Willette apologized, so we can't really say he did nothing wrong. I mean, he himself has said that he did something wrong, so I think that we got to stipulate that. And in the light of that, it seems to me that this has become quite political. I'm kind of making a statement more than I'm asking a question, but one of the things that I think also is at play, and maybe Ben Grant, I should ask you this, Republicans get very offended when people call them racist, or anybody would. I shouldn't just say Republicans. I mean, that is in today's society an extremely damaging thing to label somebody. I mean, I would imagine Senator Willette in his Google trail will suffer from that labeling for the rest of his career. Is it worth the political gain to jump so quick to making that kind of a judgment about somebody?
Is it worth the political gain? I don't measure it that way. I measure it this way. This is an elected representative of some portion of the people of Maine who has said some pretty vile things and made some very vile connections between the elected president, his wife, and terrorist organizations. That's just a totally extreme and out of bounds way to go about talking about politics. I think the question is for the people of his district whether they want someone like him with those beliefs and willing to say those things publicly. Do they want them representing? Do they want him representing them?
Right. So it's the people of his district. And I agree with you there, and I think Jon McKane would agree with you as well. It's the relationship of him to his district. What Democrats are doing now institutionally are trying to get him to resign outside of the scope of that. I mean, I think that's what I see as the most overtly political part of this controversy is that petition drive. And maybe from a pure pragmatic standpoint, that's good for them to do, because maybe it's easier for them to try to get him out in the midst of controversy than actually run a campaign. But the other thing about Senator Willette is he's not running for re-election. I mean, I think everybody pretty much knows that up there. So I don't know. I mean, I personally, on my soapbox, I think I hate seeing that stuff online. I see it all the time. I see it from other Republicans besides Senator Willette. It's stupid. It's garbage, and has no place in our dialogue, especially from elected officials. But I also think that getting so cynical that you would try to make political hay out of it is not equally as bad, but it's bad as well.
I don't think it's about making political hay. It's about seeing something that's wrong, standing up and saying this is wrong. You should not be saying these kinds of things. You should not be fomenting this kind of distrust and these connections that simply don't exist and are ridiculous to be out there proposing. It's about saying no when you see something as wrong as this going on.
Lizzy, I want to go to you on this for a little bit different perspective, because you've got a lot of war room experience, and I'm sure you've been through similar things like this before. Give us a little bit of insight of what happens, in this case with the Democrat Party, what happens with political parties when things like this pop up, and what kind of what do you use for guidance on when you've gone too far making political hay of something? I mean, I know from my experience, there's always people on both sides. Some people want to blow up the whole world about it, and some people want to tamp it down. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, in particular with this circumstance?
Right. Well, I mean, I can't speak to the Democrat Party, but I can speak to the Democratic Party.
Sorry.
And I can say, I mean, look, this is an issue that has struck a lot of chords for a lot of folks across the state. And I think that level of discourse is something people are tired of. And I also think when you look back, you know, there was an instance during Congressman Michaud's campaign where we had a 21-year-old volunteer intern who was not a paid staffer on the campaign, who had made some inappropriate tweets, most of which were quotes from comedy shows that were done before he was ever even elected, before he was even interning for us. And the Republicans called for his head. They got national news going on regarding this 21-year-old who had made some inappropriate tweets during his years in college. He wasn't even a paid staffer, and they went after him. They said he should be fired, he should be condemned, and they pushed this to national media. There was so much outrage there. And yet here we have an instance where we have an elected official who is making what I'm going to say were racist comments, and I really don't feel like that's something that we can argue about, whether you want to or not. And as a society, I think we have to stand up and call things what they are, and that's what they are. So for the Democrats, there was a lot of frustration. I think there was a lot of disappointment, and I don't think that the apology from Representative Willette was acceptable. And then for the Republican leadership in the State House to stand up and not say anything wasn't acceptable either. And you know, I do agree with Ben that we do want to keep politics out of this to an extent, but at the same time, when you have elected officials who are saying these things, you know, there is a line that has to be drawn. And I think for the Democratic Party, they made that call that they wanted to move ahead and call for his resignation. It's not the first time that a party has called for resignation of another lawmaker. You know, I think that the Democrats in the State House have tried to stay out of it a bit more, but you know, it's always a difficult judgment call, and to me, I think there's always a push from the party's perspective to make that move, and a push from lawmakers a lot of times not to want to, because there's still a lot of work that has to be done in the State House, and we want to make sure that we aren't interfering with negotiations. But at the end of the day, I mean, these were statements that were inappropriate, that had a lot of people enraged, and to me, I just hope that it allows us to engage in a more thoughtful conversation about race, period, as a state and as a country, and I think that's an issue that's been boiling up in a lot of different ways.
Okay, well, let's wrap this up here. I just want to go around the horn real quick, though, for the final note on it. Is this, and Ben Gilman, I'll start with you. I mean, is this issue over for Mike Willette, or are we going to see this being debated going forward?
I think being debated, it may be, you know, over, but, you know, the world of technology and internet, this issue never goes away for them.
Ben Grant, what do you think? Do you think we've the story's kind of peaked and is on its way out, or is there more to come?
Yeah, I think in terms of the media's interest in what's going on in the State House is probably petering out. I do think it will dog him for the rest of his tenure there, and I think it should.
Jon McKane, what do you think? Do you think this thing's almost over?
I hope it is. Again, I think it's the worst of Maine politics. He didn't show good judgment. These internet memes, these infographics are constantly going around. They're the bumper stickers of the internet. They don't help anything. I agree with Lizzy that having a thoughtful conversation on this subject is a good idea. But hopefully this is petering out. The unfolding of the petition, I guess, will be some kind of a press release probably. Hopefully that'll be it.
How about you, Lizzy? What do you think? You think this thing's run its course?
I think it's run its course, but I think it could come back to haunt a lot of candidates moving forward. And I think that we'll see how that progresses, but I could see it being an issue for a number of candidates during the next campaign where, you know, they weren't willing to stand up and say whether something was right or wrong.
Okay. All right. So let's finish up with that subject and move to slightly lighter fare here for this week's wins and fails of the week. And Ben Gilman, I'm going to start with you. What's your who was the biggest winner that you saw in politics this week?
The biggest winner this week for me, they don't know it yet, but the students of the state of Maine, on two fronts. One, K through 12, they're starting the Smarter Balance test. We'll have a better prepared workforce in the future. And if you go to the University of Maine system, it was announced no tuition increase this year. That was a big win.
Ben Grant, who's your win of the week?
I'm going to go with Representative John Martin, Democrat from Eagle Lake, for once again raising the issue of term limits. He's got a bill in, I think it was just in the news either today or yesterday, that he's got a bill in to repeal term limits. I think term limits is an idea whose time has come, and the state needs a healthy debate of whether we're really getting the best legislature we can get when we deny people the right to vote for whoever they want to in their home seat.
You know, I am so supportive of this bill, and I think we could do a whole show on term limits one day. I think the most ridiculous part about the idea of term limits is that someone who is so popular in their district that they continue to be reelected is penalized and kept from participating in the political process because of their popularity. All right, Jon McKane.
John Martin proves the point, both that they're ineffective because he's still there, and that they're unnecessary because the voters in his district voted him out when they got mad at him for something 2 years ago. It's just an idea that's past its time at this point.
That's right. Yeah, the law that ostensibly was made to get John Martin out of the legislature. John Martin's still in the legislature. Okay, Jon McKane, who's your win of the week?
Well, anyway, thank God for term limits because I didn't have to run again. That's enough. Whew. But I agree. We need to be talking about that. My win of the week was the Democratic candidate from Rockland, and is it Piney or Peeny? Piney. Okay. Penny Beebe Center won the special election in Rockland. Democrats have a great ground game. They're great on special elections, and they managed to keep the seat that they've had for many years. And congratulations to her and to the Dems on this one. It's a good win.
Yeah, I didn't exactly predict that one right on our last week's show. All right, Lizzy Reinholt, who's your win of the week?
Oregon Governor Kate Brown, she signed sweeping legislation yesterday to create an automatic voter registration program so that folks are automatically registered to vote when they go to the DMV and such. So it'll help enroll a whole bunch more people and maybe get more people engaged in the political process.
Now, Oregon is a mail vote
yep.
state too, right? People can just vote from home in the mail. I'm sure that there's no problem with fraud at all with a system like that. It's probably
Lance, I really hope you're not going to start pulling a Charlie Webster on us right now.
All right, my win of the week is U.S. Senior Senator from Maine, Susan Collins. There was a lot of buzz from an article that was written by Scott Thistle about Senator Collins potentially running for governor in 2018. This was generated through a bill that I think it was Representative Moonen had put in to try to change the appointment process. I am quite sure that this was this isn't a topic of everyday concern for Senator Collins yet, and we don't have a lot of trial balloons floated in Maine politics, but I would have to say that this is the most successful trial balloon I've ever seen. And not only publicly were Republicans and Democrats supportive of it, but behind the scenes, I have heard universal support for the idea of a Collins for Governor campaign in 2018. So I would say that she is the political winner of the week. But the fun part now, the fails of the week, go back to you. Who had the fail of the week in politics?
Is that me, Lance?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Ben
Gilman. My political loser of the week is the Federal Aviation Administration. They came in and cracked down. I think they overstepped their authority to a gentleman in Gorham who was trying to set up a small business to take aerial photography. They harassed him, made phone calls, told him to take down his website before the rules had even come out. They're way ahead of themselves, and it's unfortunate to see the government overstepping their bounds like that.
So, Ben, is it your understanding from that action from the FAA that people aren't allowed to use like GoPro drones in Maine anymore?
There's actually federal rulemaking going on around that right now, so it's beyond their scope of authority. I think the Federal Aviation Administration is trying to get into territory that's really not their purview right now, and the federal government's going through a rulemaking on this specific issue, but that's the same issue. You have a little plane with a GoPro camera, you're taking aerial photographies, beware, the FAA is going to come after you.
Ben Grant, who's your fail of the week?
Hard not to go with soon-to-be former Congressman Aaron Schock from Illinois, who today announced he is resigning from Congress. Pro tip out there for all you legislators, don't decorate your office with taxpayer money like it's a television set.
He was a Democrat, wasn't he?
Oh no.
Oh, I'm not.
Very, very rare Republican watching PBS.
Jon McKane, who's your fail of the week?
I have to go with Phil Bartlett, Democratic Party chair, for this. Well, first of all, for his performance on WVOM, he really didn't look good debating this issue on Mike Willette, and also for this petition, which I think is just, it's exactly what we don't need in Maine politics. We need to discuss policy issues. We really don't need to discuss personalities.
All right, Lizzy Reinholt, who's your fail of the week?
My fail is Governor Sam Brownback from Kansas. He passed these very sweeping, large tax cuts for the wealthy and big corporations back when he first became governor. Said that he wanted to use this as a conservative experiment. Hopefully it'll prove as a test case for Republicans down ballot in 2016 for how conservatives have the right theories and can really get the economy moving again if you just elect into office. And instead, what he has proven is that the economic theory of trickle-down economics is absolutely bunk. And what we've seen now is just a new report for jobs came out for Kansas just today that showed that Kansas is not only lagging behind the rest of the country in economic growth, but in job growth, and it's still behind the rest of the region. And then you look at another state like Minnesota that actually raised taxes on the wealthiest and ended up putting tons of money into education. And here their economy is absolutely blossoming and growing. So to me, Sam Brownback, great example of, in his own attempt to justify Republican policies, instead demonstrated why they're absolutely faith-based rather than actual fact-based.
All right. Well, there's so much right there, Lizzy. I'll leave that. Okay, my fail of the week is Department of Health and Human Services Commissioner Mary Mayhew. It is the worst kept secret in Maine politics that Mary Mayhew is consolidating a campaign effort to run for governor in 2018. I think that the idea of Mary Mayhew running for governor on its face is delusional. But I think after watching the universal positive reaction to Senator Collins potentially getting into that gubernatorial race, I think Mary Mayhew's chances of ever sitting in the Blaine House have become that much smaller. All right, so that's before we wrap up here, I want to go through and just get everybody's highlights for what to look for this week. Ben Gilman, starting with you. What's happening in Augusta? What should we look for this week?
This week we're actually going to start seeing the Education Committee start dealing with some of these standardized testing bills. So I think we're going to have the anti-Common Core folks arriving in Augusta and arguing that we shouldn't be measuring our kids to make sure they're prepared for the workforce.
All right, Ben Grant, what should we look for this week?
I think we're looking at some numbers being released ongoing by Maine Revenue Services about the governor's tax plan. We saw some, I think, either today or yesterday, showing that they are going to benefit the wealthy. We're interesting to see what else they'll have to say about it.
Jon McKane, what's the highlight of this coming week?
Well, again, the budget saga will continue to unfold, which, of course, I'm looking forward to. And I think the governor refusing to issue the bonds or permit the bonds for Land for Maine Future, I think that's going to backfire a little bit. There's a lot of people upset about that. So I think we'll be hearing more about it.
Lizzy Reinholt, what's on deck for the week in Augusta?
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like the legislative session is finally heating up, and it's going to get interesting. We've seen just in the last day and today, the Democrats are really, really ramping up their opposition to the budget. With these new numbers coming out, there are going to be new facts coming out. I think things are going to get a lot more heated when it comes to the budget conversation. It'll be really interesting to see what direction it goes and how each side ends up maneuvering there, because Republicans don't like the budget for their own reasons and Democrats don't like it for completely opposite reasons. So seeing how they mesh and come up with a compromise is going to be really entertaining.
All right, well, thanks to everybody for joining us here today. Once again, our advanced team this week was Ben Gilman, Ben Grant, Jon McKane, Lizzy Reinholt. I'm Lance Dutson. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.